Okay, we're getting close to the end of Jonah chapter 3, and for the Hebrew of Jonah 3:9, we're going to officially be introduced to the Niph'al stem, which tends to be a passive stem. So if I kill, if you put that in the Niph'al stem, it's to be killed. So let's go ahead, see if you can pronounce this. Here's how I pronounce it: Mi Yodea Yashuv V'nekam ha Elohim. Okay, what do you recognize in that line? Pause it and look. Me, you should know, vocabulary word. It's an interrogative. Who? This is yada, a vocabulary word you should know by now, which is to know. Do you know the form? We have officially had this form if you're following my Udemy Hebrew course. They hold them after the first consonant. There are three basic consonants often. And that's a sign of the what? Participle. And the basic call participle or G participle. And then so this OA, yode, that idea, coattail, killing in the case of coattail, or yodea is not rodea drive, that's something different, but yodea is knowing. Who knowing? Who knowing? That's the Hebrew way of saying who knows. Remember, Hebrew doesn't have a present tense. It uses the participle sometimes, or it doesn't. It just omits it. But the participle is the closest thing to a present tense in Hebrew. Who is knowing, we might say. Now, why is there a furtive patak here? Yodea. It's because of the guttural. You almost have to, whether you put the letter there or not. The Masoretes were very detailed people, and so that yodea. To get to, you have to go a little a. So that's where the furtive patak comes from. Yodea. So who knowing? Yashuv. Again, you should know the vocabulary word shuv, which means to turn or return. With the yod on the front, what is it? It's an imperfect, right? Yod is a third masculine singular imperfect. So who is knowing? Question mark. I'll go ahead and put it under there. Who is knowing? He will turn. And it's a question. It's kind of like maybe he will turn is the context, right? He will turn. Who is knowing whether he will turn? So the he comes from the yod. He will from the imperfect. And shuv is turn. So who knows? Maybe he will turn v'nakam. Now this is a Niph'al. It's not a standard Niph'al, unfortunately. And by the way, my next video for the Udemy course, I'll do the Niph'al perfect, and then the Niph'al imperfect, and then the Niph'al imperative. Let's check the Niph'al. We've done the Hiphil, we've done the Hithpael, we've done the call. Let's do the Niph'al, and we're very close to getting through all the main stems. There's more. There is more, but this isn't a standard Niph'al, so it would be Niph'al would be the normal. It does have the al, the calm there, and it does have a nick, kind of. But what's happened, I think, here is that the first letter of this word, nakam, is a nun, and then the first letter of the imperfect is a nun. And so they thought, why write the nun twice? Let's just double the nun. They didn't actually double the nun, but there's kind of a nun. We're missing a nun here. Have you seen a nun around here? It's kind of black veil, white on the side, wearing a skirt. Yeah. Anyway, so the case of the missing nun. But this is a Niph'al. I'll come back to it in a second. Be compassionate. Be compassionate sounds passive, but it really isn't. These certain verbs, I guess you might call them what? I don't know. We call them. I don't think they're really statives. Maybe they're statives. Anyway, the state of compassion, but they don't do passive basically. And so this is an example of a word where you just look in the dictionary what it means in the Niph'al, and it tells you, oh, in the Niph'al it means this, and you don't try to make this is the passive of whatever compassion. Don't think too hard. Just look it up in the dictionary, and it'll tell you what it means in the Niph'al. And then here's the subject finally. Ha Elohim, God. Who's turning? Maybe God, maybe the God, because it's Ha Elohim. Ha Elohim. No, we're not playing a joke on God here. It's the God. Maybe the God will turn and be compassionate. So let's break down this nakam. Like I said, it's the case of missing nun. Basically said, why I don't want to write the nun twice. I'm kind of lazy today. So it didn't really even assimilate. It's just kind of, let's just omit a nun. So again, the vav, converted imperfect. What is that? Hold on to that thought. As far as the stem, there's a missing nun that tells you it's the N or the Niph'al stem, and the word is nakam, to turn or to repent or whatever. The yod tells you it's third. Well, there's no yod. It's third masculine singular. Because it's the base form of the Niph'al or Niph'al stem. Okay, what is this converted imperfect? Okay, modern scholars don't talk about converted imperfects. Remember how I said converted imperfect? Don't tell any grammarians that I'm talking about that. It converted a future to a past tense. This is old language. A lot of times they'll call it the vacatal stem, because it's basically katal, the perfect, with a v on the front. Anyway, what katal seems awfully complicated. So converted imperfect, I'm going to call it that even though it makes no sense. What is it converting? Basically, when you have a converted perfect, that is, it basically says go with whatever the previous verb was. So since the previous verb was he will turn, even though this is a perfect tense, it says, and he will be compassionate. So again, we're trying to correct all this bad grammar talk from the past, where the perfect tense is a past tense and the imperfect tense is a future tense. That's not true. The perfect tense is completed. The imperfect tense is incomplete. But the way they used to teach beginners is, even though this is a perfect tense, and you would think it would be past tense, because it has the vav on the front, it's converting this past tense to a future tense because the previous verb is imperfect. Let me see if I can find. I'm going to try one more time to make this simple. This is not exactly right, but it might help you as a beginner. A converted perfect basically says, because of this vav on the front of the perfect, do whatever the previous verb said. And so since the previous verb was an imperfect, we're going to convert this perfect to the future tense like the previous verb. So maybe God will turn and will be compassionate. Normally you would not translate it perfect, will be compassionate. But because it's converted, we're going to go ahead and do that. I hope that made sense. If it didn't, watch the video 1,000 times. I'm sure we'll come across another one before we're done here. Okay, so the rest of the verse. See if you can pronounce that. Here's how I would pronounce it. V'sham me karon afo velo no vade. Okay, do you recognize anything here? Recognize the vav as an and. You might recognize the holon vav as a his. What else here? Lo is not. What else? May, I'm wondering if that's from, because it's in front of a guttural. Normally it would be mem, hiric, doubling, but chets don't do doubling, so we sometimes get compensatory lengthening. The seri was 1 dot, bam, it bounces off, now it's 2 dots from. So let's look at it here. So maybe God will turn and will have compassion and will turn, it is a from the heat of his nose. Your nose gets angry sometimes, not mine, I never get angry, I'm sanctified. But if your nose gets angry, his nose, and will not, we will not perish. Okay, this is another converted imperfect. I think I have that down here, or v'katal. What happens is, normally again, it would be a perfect and it would be past tense, and he turned. Again, that's not true. It's a beginner translation. But because we have a converted perfect, it's and will turn. It converts the perfect into an imperfect. Anyways, there's Hebrew grammarians out there wanting to shoot me right now. And will turn from the heat of, so this is construct. There's no way to really tell it's in construct because a holon vav is not going to go short for anybody. And so even though you suck the air out of it to make it construct, it doesn't change anything. We do have a short vowel here. Again, the guttural wants the A. They like A-class vowels, so it opens up the shava into a little bit more sound. So this, I suppose this syllable here is where we most see that this is in construct. From the heat of, his nose, his off, doubled pay there, double the pay. So from the heat of his nose, the heat of his nose, it's on his nose. Anyway, and we will not perish. So what is novade? So avad is to destroy, and it can also mean to perish. So this is not a Niph'al, but it is a imperfect. The N there is the we. I'm sorry, there's confusion. Is it the N on the front? Is it a Niph'al or is it a first person common plural imperfect? In this case, it's first person common plural imperfect, which means we. And it is imperfect because it puts stuff on the front, so it's we will, as our default translation, perish. So it's a base stem, nothing done to it, and we will not perish because it'll turn from the heat of his nose. So avad is one of these where I don't know if you remember by Yomer, and he said, novade. There are several first aleph verbs that do this holum in the imperfect. You just have to memorize them. There's several of them. Let's like to eat, to perish, to say, and they just, for whatever reason, they do a holum there. Okay, this has been a longer video than normal, and I'm very sorry, but hey, it's free, unless you're taking the Udemy course in which you paid $24.99 or less. All right, well, this has been the Hebrew of Jonah 3:9.